Welcome. I am Stephen Fox, and I am making comics.
Hey, welcome back to Making Comics. My name is Stephen Fox, and purpose of this channel is kind of document me working through the creation of my forthcoming comic, Excel. So in this particular video, I'm going to talk about my experience in creating the main adversary. So if you haven't watched the other videos, I've talked a little bit about the main character, Arthur. I've talked about some of my life and what prompted me to want to write this particular comic. It's a little bit of a contemplative story about just a couple of really difficult years in my personal existence, and this story is a way for me to kind of reflect on those, talk about what I've learned, and how it affected me. You know, Excel is it's going to be, my hope is it will carry some of the more traditional superhero story tropes, while interjecting something a little bit unique. I really struggle to think of superheroes that really reflect like a real world personality. Original superheroes, I feel like, were born out of the dreams of children, and I don't say that as any slight for adults that enjoy superhero stories. I still enjoy pulling out old New Warriors issues, and I actually have gone through a kick of reading through some old Image books that I never read. I actually am reading through the Savage Dragon archives, book 1. Anyway, all that to say, the point of Excel is for me to tell a story about a middle-aged guy who is as close to a regular middle-aged guy as I could think of. You know what I mean? He struggles with his weight. He has had relationship issues. This particular character, Arthur Byrne, is at the low point in his life. So one of the things that a lot of middle-aged guys I know struggle with is their self-esteem. So I'm detail all that out talking about Arthur, because really I don't like villains that are just created based on their agenda. You know what I mean? Like a villain that you create just to be bad. Similar, you know, if you look back in the first episode where I talked about the concept, and then the second episode where I talked a little bit about tone and genre and that kind of thing, theme is a big part of my writing process. And recently I've been trying to think, who is this bad guy, you know? And there were a couple of staples, things that I knew I wanted to be embodied in the main adversary of Excel, but I hadn't really taken the intentional time to firm those up. So what I did, I started by, okay, who is Arthur? And Arthur is a guy who, like other normal guys, struggles with self-worth, with purpose. Okay, so I feel like what I wanted to do is reflect that. What if Arthur's adversary were a reflection of, in a lot of ways, of the things that he thought he ought to be: confident, assertive, to be very sure of his place in the world. So that got me thinking. Sorry, my dog was chewing on my very pricey charging cable. Anyway. So that got me thinking, okay, yeah, I like that. So I started doing some research online for GQ-looking guys, started making a list of personality quirks that I thought could be compelling in a villain for Arthur, and that were compatible with the theme. And where I ended up with was Keanu Reeves visually, because he's a middle-aged guy who most of us would say feels like he really knows who he is and what he wants to do. So I did a sketch of that was inspired by, hopefully not too heavily, although now that you know it was inspired by Keanu Reeves, it would probably be hard not to see it. But this is a sketch of Keanu Reeves that I did as a starting point, and I'll probably change it a little bit as I go, just so it's not so directly inspired. by any individual, especially a famous individual, but you can tell he's dressed in a business suit. He is just very together, even when he is even when he is in a conflict. I want him to look attractive and just totally in his element. So, okay, that's a cool starting point. And then I took that, and if I'm being honest, when I was working on this drawing, I was getting a little bit tired, a little bit discouraged. So I was like, I really want to put together the next video, so I'm going to just knock out his beast form. So I started sketching, and I didn't do a lot of thinking beforehand. I didn't do a lot of planning. I just thought, I want him to be scary. And I started with that. And I felt like that would be enough. I've done a lot of horror-based drawing in the past, for role-playing games like Palladium games and some of that stuff. And I felt like this is my element. I can do this well, and I just got going. And the result wasn't too bad. I felt like it was kind of cool. But one thing I've discovered through this whole process, kind of as a side note to the creating the villain, is Mike I've referenced a couple of times in these videos, and he's my closest friend, oldest friend, and he's also very creative. He's a writer, and a lot of times we just send things back and forth and say, what do you think? You know what I mean? The number one goal is to make sure that we are not going down a path that is really stupid and we're just oblivious to, because any creator knows that can happen pretty easily. You get in your own head and you're not considering an audience of any kind. Anyway, so we just sent stuff back and forth. So I sent this to him, and he didn't say anything too overt or anything like that. The one thing he said was that he was surprised he was so handsome in his beast form. And the truth of it is, that didn't discourage me from this design. It didn't make me stop what I was doing and go, whoa, 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 because it kind of plays into what I want. But what I'm trying to say with Arthur, what did make me pause is I went back to Arthur and the theme. And I said, okay, what am I trying to say with the story? What am I trying to say with Arthur? With Arthur, he is going to lose the ability to be outwardly appealing at all. By the time the story is over, he is not going to be attractive. He might have some cool looking elements, but if he were to walk up to your door, he would be absolutely horrifying. And the theme of the story is like reconciling. Okay, what are the really important things in life? Like, how do we, how do we reconcile ourselves to who we are? Like, is it through exercise and dieting and becoming attractive and all these different things, or is it about working on who we are, our thoughtfulness, our understanding of who we are and who we want to be? And I really want Arthur to reflect that inward journey. As cliched as that may sound, I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, because especially in comics, because superhero comics don't talk about that really, because everybody's pretty. So I went back and I looked at this design and I thought, okay, I don't know that I'm going to get rid of this, but I'm going to set it aside. And I set it aside, and I started doing some research and looking at the his base version, like that Keanu inspired human version of the character, and I'm like, okay, what would this guy turn into if who he was on the inside came out, like literally came out of him? I took some photo reference of myself actually on my phone, and looked ridiculous. I've got 30 pictures that I really hope never leak online, but I chose the one that I thought, yeah, this is it. This is cool. And I did several sketches before I actually started on the final drawing. Planned thumbnails. I took aspects of the photograph that I really liked, and I eliminated the parts that I didn't like, or I altered them. And I did a trace over, which is just basically you're just getting the forms down. I love pen and ink. I love just black and white. It's really difficult to create depth, especially my particular style of drawing. I use a lot of tapered lines that go from thin to thick, so I have a lot of varying line values or line weights throughout my drawings. So it can be hard to differentiate the foreground from the midground from the background. So I depend a lot on color when I'm using foreshortening or any technique that causes stacking of elements. And what you can do with the color there are several approaches. These little white outlines around the hand in the foreground do a lot to pop it out. But ultimately, and I've actually used a couple other small techniques. The hand, if you really pay attention to it, has a lot more saturation to it. It's a lot more intense red and pink in skin tone. Whereas if you look at the layer just behind that of the main character, it is desaturated, and the very background, which is really just a abstract treatment, is black and white. Additionally, I've always been a fan of Arthur Adams and Todd McFarlane and Bernie Wrightson and some of these hyper detailed artists. And part of what I love about their work is being drawn in. So like this drawing in particular, I don't think that it is poorly executed, but it draws you in for a couple of reasons. One is you want to understand what's going on. There's so many lines, so much going on. You're like, how? And then once you get into it, I feel like you start to see those separations. And I used to spend hours just staring at comic art pages. Like finding all the Felix the cats that McFarlane would hide in his work. It's just a joy. That really influenced my approach to drawing. So, but as far as just getting back to the villain here, what I wanted was, okay, Arthur, his true nature is being buried under this horrific monster. And the villain is the exact opposite. He's a beautiful thing that his nature is buried under his beauty. You know what I mean? And my concept for this guy is that he can tear through his skin, similar to like Werewolf in London, but it just regrows. Essentially, the character's name is Kin, K-I-N. People that know me are going to wonder if I did that intentionally a little, but ultimately I felt like it fit the character because he has an intimate blood connection to Arthur. So Kin fit as in related to, or having a blood bond to something. I also like because he can actually control his blood. That's how he regrows his skin. And in this original drawing where he is forming, there's a knife. My concept was he was actually forming that out of blood that he forced out of his body. So it's I think it's kind of a nasty, scary idea. But I want this character is going to have a really raw vision for the world and raw understanding of the world. But the funny thing is, it's not going to be incorrect. So he is going to have really harsh things to say about this world. What's wrong is not his understanding of the world, it's his approach to remedying it. So I don't want to get too deep into it, but that's where he and Arthur are going to come at odds. So anyway, this is my main adversary for Arthur. His name's Kin, and then there will be a secondary character that I've mentioned in other episodes called the Machinist. And look forward to documenting next episode. I get in the habit of saying what next episode is about, and I'm way wrong because I'm doing this real time. Like as I'm making progress, I make a video, I post it, and this one just happens to be about fleshing out the bad guy. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to give input, like positive, negative, what I can do better in the comments or whatever. You can also find me on Instagram. It's Fox Storytelling, all together. And yeah, thanks.